Alright, Common Core Algebra 2. So here we are for 4.2 Part 3. Now the first two parts on 4.2 were about graphing, and we looked at two forms when we graphed, intercept and vertex. And then 4.1 we looked at standard form and how to graph that. Well, 4.2 is just going to talk about how to convert between the two forms. For right now, we're only going to look at converting into standard form. So we're going to take our intercept form and put that in standard form, and then we're also going to take our vertex form and put that in standard form. The next sections will start to talk about how we could take standard form and convert it back into intercept and vertex form, which is slightly more complicated. So first thing, if we are going to do our intercept to standard form, remember intercept form would say something like f of x equals a, and then we have our intercepts, so x minus p and x minus q. So to convert in intercept form, what we're going to do is multiply the parentheses. So that means we are going to multiply these two things with a process you guys have seen in the past that we have referred to as FOIL. Now really, it's like distribution. We're just distributing two things. And then once we multiply those parentheses, the last thing we're going to have left to do is to distribute a. So there's a lot of multiplication here. An example of what that would look like is when we have f of x equals negative 2, x plus 9, and x minus 1. So you don't have to do this, but remember this would tell you that your x-intercepts are negative 9, 0, and 1, 0. And then we had that whole process about how we could figure out the vertex and the y-intercept and then plot all those points and graph them. That's not what we're doing today. We are going to multiply the parentheses, which means I'm going to take x times x and x times negative 1. That would give me x squared and a minus 1x. And then I'm going to do 9 times x and 9 times negative 1, which give me a 9x and a minus 9. Now when I combine those two terms in the middle, what I end up with is f of x equals negative 2, and then in parentheses here, so this is what we get after we multiply those two, x squared plus 8x minus 9, because negative 1x and a plus 9x gave us a plus 8x. And then we're going to distribute that negative 2, which just means negative 2 times all three terms inside. Don't forget to do it times all three terms. And that will give us a negative 2x squared minus 16x plus 18. And now you see we're in standard form where we have our a, our b, and our c. Okay, so that is how we would take intercept form into standard form. The other thing we're going to look at is taking vertex to standard form. So we have three steps for this one. And again, a quick reminder, vertex, if I use y instead of f of x this time, we'd have a times x minus h squared plus k. And so our vertex would be hk, where h, remember, hates its sign, it changes, k likes its sign, it keeps it. So first thing you need to do is square the parentheses, and you need to keep in mind this is still multiplying, and I'll explain a little bit on the next slide on what that means, but I'm going to square that parentheses. Then I'm going to distribute a, and finally I'm going to combine like terms. This combine like terms comes from that plus k part. Okay, squaring the parentheses you can think of as x minus h times x minus h, because that is what this square right here means. It means x minus h times x minus h. An example of that, f of x equals 3, and then x minus 3 squared in parentheses plus 7. So our vertex on this one would be 3, 7. And then we had the whole process we could talk about finding a y-intercept and then other points. First thing I'm going to do is square the parentheses. What that means is, like I said, x minus 3 times x minus 3. So I just rewrote that a little bit so I could see my two parentheses like I did in that first one. And then same I do. I'm going to do x times x and x times negative 3. Negative 3 times x and negative 3 times negative 3. Once I distribute those and combine like terms, I end up with f of x equals 3. That's going to give us x squared minus 6x plus 9, and I have that plus 7, the k value, out on the outside still. I haven't touched that. So then we need to distribute that 3. So 3 doesn't distribute to all four terms. It doesn't go to that plus 7. It just goes to the x squared, the minus 6x, and the plus 9, which is going to give us 3x squared minus 18x plus 27. And then you'll notice I just brought down that plus 7. And here is where we need to combine like terms. This last two terms are the ones we can combine. They're both constants. They don't have any variables. So I'm going to end up with 3x squared minus 18x plus 34. Okay, and that is it for our lesson about converting to standard form from intercept and vertex form. The big part that I think we're going to review a lot in class tomorrow is when we multiply two parentheses together, that FOIL piece that you've learned in the past, which really just means distribution of two numbers instead of one number at a time. All right, see you guys next time.